Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about foraging. Foraging is a huge essential part of pretty much any captive animal's life. You have to think about in the wild, that would be the majority of what they spend their time doing is looking for food, foraging around, trying to find it. So providing foraging opportunities is something that you should be able to do for pretty much any animal. Now, the main thing we're going to focus on today is foraging for birds and also foraging for our smaller animals, which we have dagoos, chinchillas, and also gerbils. And they love to forage because naturally, especially the gerbils, love to dig, love to chew, love to get into things. So this is a great opportunity to give them some treats that take them some time and some energy and some mental work to get to. So first off, we're going to start with the birds. I just have small boxes like this. It can be so easy as just saving boxes when you find them. I'm kind of the crazy bird person at work who takes all of the small boxes when they're put in the recycling. So these little boxes are ones I got from work. They're the perfect size because they are big enough that the conures can actually fit in them. There's no issue of getting stuck, so I usually will just put them on the bottom of the cage so they can go in and pull stuff out. So for the birds, these birds are pretty used to foraging. A lot of birds who aren't used to foraging are going to need some very easy tasks to kind of teach them how to do it because a lot of captive birds just are not aware of how to forage. So that can be as easy as just putting a very obvious treat in a box and barely covering it with something like this crinkle paper here, which you can get at literally Dollar General, Walmart, anywhere, or tissue paper so that they can see the treat, but they have to move something to get to it. And then you can just kind of work up your difficulty level. So these birds are pretty used to having to forage for stuff, so they don't really need a lot of hand holding at this point. So treats we're using for the birds, I'm using nuts. We have a whole variety of whole nuts, walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, which I have not tried to crack open yet because they are very difficult. We have fresh pecans, and we have macadamia nuts as well. Now, because they're green cheeks, they're just not big enough to crack the nuts, so I do go ahead and just crack it for them. I still leave it in the shell so that they do have to pry and pick it out, but they don't have to actually crack the shell themselves. Here, you want a piece of nut? There you go. There you go. So all I do is just put a couple pieces in, and then you just kind of want to build layers of stuff that they have to get into. So put a little bit of crinkle paper, put a little piece of tissue paper. Now the tissue paper I'm not going to use for the dagoos and the gerbils just because they do like to eat stuff that they chew on. The birds just like to tear it and destroy it and pick it out, so it's safe for them to do. I have pieces of yucca, which are pretty much all animal safe. The birds love to shred it. It's very soft, so it's a great thing for any size bird. Budgies and cockatiels, conures, literally everybody can have yucca. So I put that in there. I have some millet, which I cut into very small pieces. Millet is basically the potato chip of the animal community. It comes in full sprays, but unless you have a baby bird or a bird that is not eating well and you just want it to eat something, you don't want to give a whole spray of millet. So I just cut it into the little chunks like this. You can also pry off the little individual pieces. So just kind of scatter that. Timothy hay is another thing you can use in a foraging thing. It is safe for birds as well, so you can put a little bit of that in there because it's safe to eat just like it is for chinchillas and dagoos and everything like that. Put a couple little wood pieces in. They just like to pick these up and toss them around. Top it off with a little more tissue paper. Put a couple more nuts in there. And usually what I like to do is leave some very easy reward stuff at the very top, just barely covered, just so that they can kind of get into it and get that reward right away and then keep looking for more. And they know me well enough by now to know that I put all sorts of stuff in here. So here you go, birds. Busy box. So the next one we're going to do is something for the gerbils. Now these boxes are super cool. Got them at work again. They have little holes in them, so it's a great point for them to start chewing. So all I do with these is just kind of, again, layer stuff. Put some Timothy hay. These are great. These are mahogany pods. It's something that is, you know, a natural resource, totally safe to eat and to ingest and to chew on. It's, again, like the yucca, a softer wood, but it's not as soft as yucca, so it does take a little bit to pick apart. So I'll throw a couple of those in there. Do some crinkle paper. Do some nuts as well. Gerbils, they can get through some nuts, but I like the conures, kind of like to give them a little head start so that they don't get frustrated easily and not forage after that. So again, you're just kind of layering stuff, putting some wood stuff in there to chew. These are great. These are a huge favorite in our house. They're apple wood sticks. You can get gigantic bags off Amazon. The chinchillas and degus especially love them. They actually peel and eat the bark. Bark is a natural part of their diet, so they will just slowly pick all the bark off and then eat the inside. So I usually scatter a bunch of those in there. Put in some more Timothy hay. Put in some more crinkle paper. And I don't stuff it to the top, especially for the gerbils, because they do like to widen these little holes and get all the way inside, and then they kind of rummage around and dig through it. So you don't need to stuff it to the top. Any box that you use, you can just put a couple things in there just to kind of entice them to open it up and dig around and find what's inside. And these guys are a little easier than birds to get foraging because, like I said earlier, digging and rummaging around is kind of part of their natural activity, so they don't often have to be taught to do it. They're naturally very curious. And throw a couple pieces of millet in there as well. A lot of small animal owners don't realize millet is totally safe for gerbils, for hamsters, for rats. I mean, pretty much anything that's capable of eating seeds can also have millet, because millet is just a seed. But again, you do want to follow the same rules of not very much, because it is a pretty fatty seed, which is why everyone likes it. Sprinkle a couple of these little treats in here that we got. These are just little mountain grass pellets just made out of hay in a compressed form, something that they like to munch on. And then we'll just close it up. And for the gerbils, I usually don't close it all the way. I leave them a little opening at the front as well. So that's how you kind of make little foraging boxes. You can use pretty much anything that you have at your disposal that your animals might like to mess with, to chew on, to eat. But foraging is something great that every pet owner should get into so that your pets can live a more enriched, happy life and kind of have something to break up the day-to-day routines that they might go through. So now we're going to make the chinchilla foraging trays. A lot of people are not aware that chinchillas actually have a pretty restrictive diet compared to degus, gerbils, stuff like that. In the wild, their diet is mostly grasses and hays, so they cannot handle much sugar, they cannot handle much fat, so they cannot have nuts, they shouldn't have the millet that the degus and gerbils can. They also shouldn't be having any sort of fruit. A lot of people like to give chinchillas banana chips, raisins, stuff like that, but that really isn't good for them because it is very, very sugary and it's not something that their bodies are meant to handle. So their diet is a lot more restricted to things like barks, grasses, hays. So we have just egg cartons. We get all of our eggs in these egg cartons. We can use them for foraging trays. Egg cartons make great foraging trays because they have all these nice little cups and they're super easy to just fill with stuff, and then you can cover it with hay, stuff like that, to make it a foraging tray. So I started out by putting some of those compressed little hay pellets in there. I'm going to put some of the mahogany pods in there. They don't really fit very well, but they'll still forage for them. Put some yucca. Yucca is a huge chinchilla favorite because they, like I said, they like to eat barks, woods, stuff like that. We're going to put some of these balsa wood stuff in here. Balsa is a great wood to make toys out of because it is pretty soft. It's safe for them to chew on. That also goes for birds, stuff like that as well. And then we're also going to put these sticks in there, the apple wood sticks, which again, they love. They go ballistic for them. And then we're just gonna cover it all with hay. We don't give the chinchillas the big cardboard boxes just because, again, they do tend to eat a lot of stuff that you put in their cage. We don't give them anything with plastic. Everything in their cage is metal or wood, stuff that they can chew on. So chinchillas shouldn't have things like the plastic tubing. Some people will put fleece in there with them, which is kind of a controversial subject. Ours chew it, so we don't put it in there. If you do use fleece with your chinchilla, you just have to be very, very careful and watch them. And if they start chewing it, you should be switching to something else because they are eating it. If they're chewing it, they're eating it. So that makes the foraging trays for the chinchillas. And then we have the foraging boxes for the dagies and the gerbils. And then the tiny foraging boxes for the birds. So those are kind of the range of foraging activities that we try to provide. You don't have to put them in every single day because then it just kind of becomes part of their routine. So it should be something that's special treat. Mix it up a little, do different foraging activities every day, but try not to do the same thing every day.